Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Please do. Great.
How are you? I feel such great things about Hi, Shakila. How are you? I'm doing this with all the, thanks.
Hello, very good. How are you? Yeah, right. That is.
Hi, I'm Trudy Weiss-Craig.
Very good to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Hiding behind the face.
I do agree. It's better to be that way.
Oh,
Okay, well, you know what? I'll take you guys on the way back. What's that? I'll take you on the way back.
Your sister's already planning stuff. She's like, I didn't get to eat. I don't want him to go to the bathroom. She's like, give it up.
So I'll take you back and I'll feed you because I haven't eaten either. So, all right, Bessie, how are you?
It was great. It was great. I've just been kind of blah since that,
Travels with John Stephenson here at St. Mary's Chapel here at Thomas More University for the gathering here tonight.
Hi, how are you? I think I have.
The William T. Bill Robinson III, 67. Institute for Religious Liberty at Thomas More University presents a fall interfaith program, a frontline perspective from a lifelong Jewish activist, featuring American Jewish Committee CEO David Harris tonight. And other speakers will be here tonight also. Thomas More University, Centennial.
Trying to make a young man's shot in an old man's life.
October the 19th, 2021.
Good to see you.
Everyone could take a seat, please. Thank you very much for joining us in person tonight. And we also have a group of people who will be watching us on Facebook. I'd like to begin by inviting to the podium Monsignor Gerald Goodell, the rector of the Mary Seat of Wisdom Chapel, and the current holder of the Wilbur and Ellen Hackman Ziegler Endowed Chair. Monsignor Goodell.
Let us pray. Creator God, each and every entity you have made, from smallest to greatest, proclaims your glory. We humans, whose minds can grasp that reality, are nonetheless often so weak in our imagining that we seek to bind you, who are unlimited, within the confines of our notions about your nature. We invoke those cramped ideas to justify rejecting anyone who sees you differently, who worships you in a fashion other than our own. We refuse to welcome one another and excuse ourselves in the name of these gods of our own making. We neglect the infinite height by which you transcend our poor intellects to squeeze your majesty into our pitiful idols. Open wide our minds, we beg you. Purify our hearts of these attitudes so unworthy of you, so that we might learn to respect the sincerity with which each person strives to know and worship you. Give us the courage to treat each other in the exercise of our religious freedom with compassion and consideration. Strengthen in us the desire to dwell together in peace, so that our diverse voices might resound in a beautiful polyphonic chorus to your honor and glory forever. Amen.
Amen.
Now we will have welcoming remarks from the president of Thomas More University, Dr. Joseph Chilo.
Thank you, Ray. And certainly it's great to see everyone here gathered for such a wonderful event. It is my great pleasure to welcome our friends, our guests, and members of our community to the William T. Robinson III Institute for Religious Liberty Centennial Interfaith Fall Event. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our guest speakers this evening, David Harris, and to our commentators, welcome back, Dr. James Buchanan and Shakila Ahmad. I would also like to take this opportunity to welcome His Excellency Bishop John Ifford. Bishop Ifford serves as the 11th Bishop of Covington and as the new Chancellor of Thomas More University. We are delighted to have you here this evening. And to our friends who are joining us through Facebook Live, welcome all to Thomas More University's Mary Seat of Wisdom Chapel. Thomas More is the Catholic University of the Diocese of Covington, serving more than 2,000 students from northern Kentucky to around the world. As we celebrate our centennial this year, it gives us reason to pause and to celebrate our history and tradition, and to attest to the benefits of a strong Catholic liberal arts education. The ability to think critically, to be effective communicators, to be ethical and servant leaders, and to have a positive impact upon others in our communities are hallmarks of a Thomas More education and our students and alumni who continue to exemplify our mission and values. Inspired by the Catholic intellectual tradition and by our patron, St. Thomas More, we challenge students of all faiths to examine the ultimate meaning of life, their place in the world, and their responsibility to others. Since its founding as Villa Madonna College in 1921, the university has grown and today plays a key role in the success of northern Kentucky and the greater Cincinnati region. The university's new strategic plan, Lighting the Way, lays out an ambitious plan and roadmap that positions the university strategically as we begin our second century. As the oldest higher education institution in northern Kentucky, we take great pride in our history and the significance that Villa Madonna College, Thomas More College, and today, Thomas More University has had in the development of northern Kentucky and the many lives that our institution has shaped and touched over its 100 years, and the role that we continue to play in shaping the future of Catholic higher education. Looking ahead, it gives us great excitement to recognize our past and legacy, but more importantly, it gives us an opportunity to forge our future and destiny as a premier Catholic liberal arts university. We are fortunate through the generosity of William Bill Robinson and his wife Joan, who's in attendance here today, and who also serves on our board of trustees at the university, to have established the William T. Robinson III Institute for Religious Liberty at Thomas More University. Thank you, Joan. Established in 2015, the mission of the Institute is to advance the American concept of religious freedom as an inalienable right and the protection of that right for all people, which is essential to our democratic values. Since 2015, the Institute has sought to bring dynamic and distinguished scholars to our campus to engage in conversations that are timely and relevant. The William T. Robinson III Institute for Religious Liberty exemplifies the very best of a liberal arts education and the importance of understanding the differences that make up our world and our communities. And these differences should unite us rather than divide us in the pursuit of truth as an enduring quality of the values that we hold dear. And certainly the challenge that we're facing today as a society, as a community, requires us to maintain our religious freedom as these rights and the pursuit of truth that must endure. Here at Thomas More, as our mission states, we challenge students of all faiths to examine the ultimate meaning of life, their place in the world, and their responsibilities to others. The university's mission is timely, relevant, and compelling. At the forefront of the institution's work and vision is Dr. Ray Hebert, Executive Director of the Institute, and the Executive Committee who works closely with Dr. Hebert, whom I'd like to thank all of you in attendance here tonight, and thank you, Ray, for your outstanding service to the university in this work. This evening's interfaith event, A Frontline Perspective from a Lifelong Jewish Activist, brings together three distinguished scholars and individuals who embody the values and the significance of religious freedom. The strength of Thomas More University and our commitment as a Catholic liberal arts institution is evident this evening, and I thank our distinguished scholars in sharing their scholarship, their work, their experiences, and their passion with all of us tonight. I hope all of you enjoy this evening's presentation and conversation. Again, thank you for joining us, and welcome to Thomas More University's Centennial Interfaith Fall Event.
Now, my primary role will be to introduce the three speakers, and then they're going to do something very unique tonight. They've agreed that there is a series of 6 questions. 3 will be asked by each of the commentators to our primary speaker, and as he answers those, the comments will be interspersed as needed as they move along. So I will introduce the 3 speakers, mention the 6 questions, and then we'll leave it to them to take it from there and take us through the evening. Begin with, we're very blessed to have David Harris here with us this evening. David is the CEO of the American Jewish Committee. He has been in that position since 1990. He has been recently praised by the New York Times for having the organization that is one of the leading organizations in the entire country as far as Jewish organizations. He is called the Foreign Minister of the Jewish People by former President of Israel, Shimon Peres. In his 30-plus years, he's been honored more than 20 times by foreign governments for his international work, making him the most decorated American Jewish organizational leader in the United States history. Academically, he has ties to the University of Pennsylvania for his bachelor's, London School of Economics, has been a visiting scholar at Johns Hopkins University and Oxford University. His master's and Ph.D. are both from the London School of Economics. He is a married father of 3 who meets with world leaders routinely to advance Israel's diplomatic standing and promote international human rights and interreligious and interethnic understanding. Shakila Ahmad from the Islamic Center of Greater Cincinnati has been the board chair and president of the Islamic Center, is a member of the executive committee for the IRL here at Thomas More, and we are thrilled to have her in that role. She was the first woman to serve in the capacity as president of the Islamic Center at such an institution in the United States. She's the founding chair of ICGC's Muslim Mothers Against Violence Initiative and the Greater Cincinnati Interfaith Circles. She's been recognized regularly for building bridges in a troubled world. She currently serves on the IAJC's Muslim Jewish Advisory Council, made up of leaders across the country whose goals include strengthening state and federal legislation against hate crimes and promoting the contributions of Jewish and Muslim Americans. Dr. James Buchanan, the former director of the renowned Brueggeman Center for Dialogue at Xavier University, whom we are proud to be partnering with, studied comparative religions and ethics at Yale and the University of Chicago, has studied and taught in Paris, Moscow, Beijing, and Hong Kong, formerly held the Best Family Chair and Professorship in Ethics and Religion and Society at Xavier, and the Carolyn Werner Gannett Chair in Humanities at the Rochester Institute of Technology before that. He has lectured and still lecturing worldwide and published widely in a wide range of global ethical matters. He has played a major role in Greater Cincinnati, as has Shakila, with what is sometimes known as the Festival of Faiths. I leave that now to the 3 of them, and I believe you want to just...
If I will begin.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead, too?
Right. First of all, let me thank you, Ray, for the invitation to be here, and Thomas More for this event. I was fortunate enough to have been invited, I guess was the last year, the last time this was done, and to give the lecture at this. Unfortunately, didn't get to do it live, so as many of the lectures that we've all been doing recently, you get to do a lecture and stare at your own face in a computer screen, which is always just not only disconcerting, but you always begin to think, how is my hair? What's going on with this? But welcome, David, to Cincinnati. Let me begin. As someone who's been involved in activism of various types throughout my whole life, I always think it's interesting to have a biographical note of what led you down this path. How did this start for you? And then I want to follow up on that after you do this. Was it an event? Was it a series of events? What led you down this path?
Well, before I begin speaking, as they say, let me say a few words. I'm very moved to be here tonight, particularly for the symbolism of this dais and the way in which this program has been organized. And I really want to thank the university, not just for inviting me, but for conceptualizing this kind of conversation, and also congratulate the university, as we Jews say, Mazel Tov, on your centenary. And as we Jews say again, and may you go from strength to strength at Thomas More University. Welcome to you, Bishop. I gather you're still a newbie, your first month, and I want to thank you, Gary Zola, who's a professor at the Hebrew Union College across the river, for being, to use a Yiddish word, the shocking, the matchmaker. And if you remember Fiddler on the Roof, the matchmaker made me a match. Well, here was the matchmaker right here between Thomas More University and myself. Several of my AJC colleagues are here, Kathy Hellman and Melanie Pell and Jillian Laskowitz. And last but not least, there is a connection among the three of us, which I'm proud to say that the American Jewish Committee forged. As you heard from Ed, Shakila is a member of our Muslim Jewish Advisory Council, which is both a national and a regional operation, and we hope will continue to expand. And James, if I'm not mistaken, you travel with us to Israel for the Christian Leadership Initiative, which is another one of our interfaith programs that we're so proud of. So that's the before I speak part. The answer, James, is actually very personal for me. It was less an event, though there were a couple along the way. And frankly, it was my family experience. I'm the first member of my entire extended family born in the United States. Both of my parents are survivors of the Holocaust. In the case of my mother, she was a refugee first from the Soviet Union and Soviet communism, found refuge in France, lived quietly for 11 years, studied until the Nazis occupied France in 1940 and were again hunting for Jews. And my mother, her family fled, hid, and eventually escaped. My father was a refugee from Austria after the 1938 Anschluss, which was the German occupation of Austria. My father was expelled from the university, where, as I later learned, he was studying something I can barely pronounce, the synthesis of the heavy hydrogen atom, something he began at the university at the age of 16. 2 years later, was expelled, escaped, and then had a very long war story, including imprisonment, escape, and ultimately ended the war with OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, the wartime spy agency of the United States, which led him to be parachuted behind enemy lines the last 2 years of the war. And the then formidable head of the OSS, Colonel Wild, whose name Wild Bill Donovan, William Donovan, to the United States to help create the CIA, which was founded through the OSS. I mention the story because even though my parents rarely talked about these issues, many Holocaust families rarely spoke about these until much later in life. I grasped that there was something different about my family. And when other children were talking about the camps that their parents went to, camps like Hiawatha or Pocahontas, the only camps that I knew were camps called Dachau and Treblinka. And I couldn't quite reconcile the Native American names with seemingly foreign names and very different experiences with no camp songs. So in a way, James, without necessarily realizing it, I was sort of drawn into this world and tried to answer a fundamental question. Why did bad things happen to good people? And why in particular were Jews targeted, and not for the first time? European soil had been fertilized by anti-Semitism for centuries, which made it far easier for Nazi Germany and its collaborators to pursue the Jews, to a large degree with tragic success. 6 of 9 million European Jews were slaughtered. My parents were one of the lucky ones. And so I don't want to make it sound too cliched, but I realized as I grew older that I wanted to try and help make sure that, number one, their memory was honored, and number two, that nothing like this ever happened again. And that led me to the American Jewish Committee, and now 42 years later, I'm happy to say that I think I'm off probation.
Let me just do a brief follow-up. Having been involved in various forms of activism throughout my life as well, for at least as many years as that as well, I've seen not only issues change, but I've seen the forms that activism take change. What's your experience with that in terms of the way in which your activism, the paths it has taken, and how that has changed? And then finally, how would you like to see it change? What would you like to see go on as we move forward?
Well, I cut my teeth as an activist in 1974. So the triggering event, back to your earlier question, for me was a plea that I heard, we heard. There was no social media at the time, so it came in other forms. And it was really 3 words in Hebrew, Shalach et Ami. In Russian, because it came from Russian speakers behind the Iron Curtain, Atpustin narod moy. And in English, it's translated in the 4 words most associated with the story of Moses and the Jews in Egypt, let my people go. It was the story of literally millions of Jews trapped behind the Iron Curtain. Just a few years after the Holocaust, and though there were no death camps in the spirit of the Nazi death camps, the Soviet policy was a policy of cultural genocide to extinguish every last vestige of Jewish life. And by the way, I would add, even though the Jewish situation was quite particular, essentially every last vestige of authentic religious life in the Soviet Union. I stress the word authentic because there was an inauthentic religion practiced as a kind of Potemkin village, as a kind of show religion. But I think as many of this audience know, the official policy of the Soviet Union was a policy of state atheism. And therefore, the holy, the divine, the faithful were seen as enemies. And it was interesting in the Gulag, the Soviet version of the prison system, how many believers met each other across faith lines. Ukrainian Catholics and Russian Orthodox and Greek Orthodox and Jews, and there were some Pentecostals and others as well. So I learned activism the old-fashioned way, James, and that was you go into the streets, you stand in front of the Soviet embassy, you protest, you petition, you try and twin young Jewish children here in the United States with Jewish children in the Soviet Union to create a human relationship. You try and travel to the Soviet Union, prepare others to travel and to smuggle whatever they can. Religious artifacts, Star of David, Shabbat candles, a Hanukkah menorah, whatever you thought you might be able to put into your suitcase that wouldn't be found by the Soviet customs authorities. And in December 1974, after being in the Soviet Union for several months on the US-Soviet teachers exchange, during which I met many Jews, I was arrested and held for 3 days and 2 nights under house arrest, and then I was put on a plane to Helsinki, Finland. And that, James, if anything, was the sort of final straw, because I realized that my parents' story was not just a story of the past, because at the end of the day, it's obviously extraordinarily important to protect the memory of the past. But as I've said in many Holocaust commemorations, if people are really serious about learning the lessons of the Holocaust or the Shoah, as we say in Hebrew, don't just mourn dead Jews, work with living Jews. The ultimate test of understanding is not to bring back what is not bring backable. Protect their memory, preserve their memory, learn the lessons, but ultimately, it's about living Jews. And so I arrived in Helsinki, Finland in the middle of winter. Any of you who've been to Finland, if you're a world traveler, James, knows that there are probably 2 hours of light in Finland in December. But I have to tell you, after months in the Soviet Union, the gray, dismal Soviet Union, I remember my arrival in Finland as the brightest, sunniest day of my life. It was probably 30 degrees below zero. Could barely see the sun. But I was on fire. If the Soviets had wanted to intimidate me and silence me, they did the exact opposite. And so our activism was based again on pre-social media. What's really different today is technology. And I asked myself, James, if we had had the tools of social media in the 1970s, how much more effective might we have been at conveying messages, organizing people, engaging with legislators and others. So we did it the old-fashioned way. By the way, I just want to say one more thing, because we're here in this place of worship, that one of the key elements of that activism, which to me is as important today as then, was what we at AJC refer to as the Interreligious Task Force on Soviet Jewry, which was led by Sister Anne Gillen and Sister Rose Thering, both, as we say in the Jewish tradition, of blessed memory. Father Robert Ryman, who subsequently served in the House of Representatives. We could not have sustained our campaign as Jews alone without enlisting the full-throated support of people of other faiths, and in this case particularly of the Catholic faith, who showed up at every protest, at every international gathering, when we went to Reykjavik for the Reagan-Gorbachev summit in order to assert the rights of Jews in the Soviet Union. People like Sister Rose and Sister Anne were by our side, and it was a very powerful, compelling message to tell the Soviets, if you think it's about Jews, it's about fundamental human rights and religious liberty, and it affects us all as one.
So, I want to, first of all, thank you, Ray, President Chilo, for your gracious invitation, and I'm truly humbled to be between two actual scholars. I do not refer to myself as a scholar, but an humble educator that honored to be here. I do want to acknowledge the constituency from the country called Ohio that came all the way from up north as far as Mason and beyond to be here. So thank you to all of them and all of the friends that I see, and very much the matchmaker Gary Zola, who is very dear and a very respected colleague as well. So it is. I have met David before, and it's been really a humbling experience to see the immense work that the American Jewish community has done on behalf of the Muslim Jewry. But the question that I have for David is, among the many different Jewish organizations, and some of them well represented in Cincinnati and in the greater tri-state region, you've been at the AJC since 1979, and before becoming CEO in 1990, it's not very common to be at one company, so to speak, for so long. So why AJC? And I'll just ask my follow-up is that, and how have you seen it evolve? And, what are your thoughts on why you came, the stay, and then where you are today?
Thank you, Shakila. I guess my children, if they were here, would mutter to one another, he stayed because he couldn't get another job. But they're not here, so. So I'll try and offer a different answer. I grew up not knowing about the alphabet soup of Jewish organizations. My parents were not involved in Jewish organizations. They were too busy figuring out America and learning English through their son, and trying to navigate jobs and all the other survival issues of any newcomer, and dealing with some of their lingering trauma. So it was all new to me, Shakila. But I met it. Before coming to AJC, there was this span of 4 years from 1975 when I came out of the Soviet Union until 1979 when I joined. And I spent most of that time in Rome and Vienna. Now, why Rome and Vienna? Because these were the two arrival points for Jews able to leave the Soviet Union and other communist countries. If they were able to leave, they arrived in Vienna. And then from Vienna, they were transferred to Rome, and they were processed in Rome. And eventually, if they were able to get visas for resettlement in other countries, they then moved. And lots of people came to see us, especially in Vienna.